If you're still working on your warm-up, finish it off, type it in real quick, I'll give you time. But you're going to have to make sure you follow along, get your notes. Okay, sit. Sit. So we're going to get started on our lesson, so headphones out. Alright. So this lesson that we're going to work on today is
scientific notation.
kind of random. You guys have done this before, probably in science. It's kind of a, I don't really know why they did it in this order, but that's what the book does, so that's what we'll do. We're just going to work on scientific notation today, and it's not super tough. It's not super tough here. So, scientific notation is written as a product of two factors in the form of a times 10 to the n, where n is an integer, and 1 is less than or equal to absolute value of a, which is less than 10. Or in other words, your scientific notation, you're going to have a number times 10 to something. When you look at your scientific notation, your exponent can't have decimals. Exponent can't have decimals. And your first number must be between 1 and 10 or -1 and -10. So it's got to be between 1 and 10, but it could be negative. You can have decimals in this first number, that doesn't matter. All that matters is that it's between 1 and 10. And then your exponent can't have decimals. It could be negative, like right here, 7.1 times 10 to the -5. That's fine, as long as there's no decimal. So for example, if we had like a 3.1 times 10 to the -2.5, that doesn't work. That's not scientific notation. Or if I had, say, 30 times 10 to the 4, that also doesn't work because this number is not between 1 and 10. So, can't have any decimals right here, and this has to be between 1 and 10. That's what it takes for scientific notation. And basically all we're doing today is going back and forth between scientific notation and regular numbers. And it's not super tough. It gets a little annoying sometimes, counting up different places. Sorry. Sorry if I go too fast. Sorry, I get so excited. You're doing that.
No.
It's real fun.
Mr. Golf. Real fun.
Skip the notes, get straight to the good stuff.
No. I just wanted to say your name.
Oh, yeah, it
Hurry up.
Okay, we'll give it back.
So
So
right
right sit up there.
This is not scientific notation because I had -2.5.
No.
Not scientific notation because that's a decimal. So we
And that's
can't have
how
decimals there. And the number in front, it's got to be between 1 and 10. Or -1 there. So that one's right. That would be a good example. Yep. Alright, so we're going to practice writing numbers in scientific notation. And we use scientific notation because some numbers are really kind of a pain to write. So, for example, the approximate distance between the Sun and Saturn is, let's see, 1,430,000,000 kilometers. That's really a pain to write. It's not very fun. So, we use scientific notation because it's way easier. And I've given you all the steps right here. So to start with, we need to find where the decimal is. And I'm actually just going to write this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. 4, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just doing this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Okay. First off, we need to find a decimal. Do you guys see the decimal in this?
It's going to be between the 4 and the 3?
No. It is at the very end. We're not actually writing it right now. This is like having a point 0 right here. So there's no decimal here, but we're going to move it over there, Moses. So you're on the right track. So if you don't see a decimal, put one down at the very end. And then we're going to take this decimal and we're going to move it left until it gets between the first and second number. And we can't just go over here and write it down. We're going to count how many times we move over because we're going to need that number. So, so I need to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to move my decimal over 9 times. And I'm going to write that 9 down so I don't forget it. Okay, now that I've moved my decimal over here, I'm going to drop all the zeros at the end. So all these empty zeros over here, I'm just going to drop them. And I'm going to have 1.43. I'm going to drop all these extra zeros on the end. After that, I'm going to add in my scientific notation piece. I'm going to go times 10, and I need an exponent on this 10. And that exponent is going to be the same as the number of times I moved my decimal. It'll be to the 9. So, 1,430,000,000 in scientific notation is 1.43 times 10 to the 9. And these are basically the same steps for all of these. So we're going to write this number down here in scientific notation. So, there's no decimal, so I'm going to put it at the end. I'm going to move my decimal between the first and the second, so I want it to go all the way here. And I'm not just going to write it because I need to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 again. I got to move it 9 places over. I'm going to write the 9 down just so I don't forget. And I'm going to drop all these extra zeros at the end. When you do this, if you have like a 0 in the middle, so for example, if this was like a 605 like this, 605, 0, 0, 0, and you know, a whole bunch, you don't drop this middle 0. You only drop the end ones. Only drop the stuff at the end. So we drop the stuff at the end. On this, that was just kind of a random example. If the 0 is in the middle of regular numbers that aren't 0, keep it. But drop all the end zeros. So I moved my decimal over 9 times, and I now have 6.5879. And now I'm going to go times 10. And my exponent is exactly the same as the number of times I moved my decimal. Times 10 to the 9. Alright, first and last problem. What you do, the one in the box. Write it in scientific notation. That one in the box, write it in scientific notation.
Okay.
It's not super tough, it's just kind of a pain to count all the zeros.
Yes.
We're missing one thing. You'll see. You'll see. That's right.
Oh, I got it.
Don't count how many times you moved it.
Okay.
Decimal supposed to be between 1 and 10 and 14.
Count how many times you moved it.
14.
Did you add in the negative that you missed? Yes. Okay to me, as long as you set a time right there?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as that number's right, and count it.
Did I do it?
No, thank you.
Oh, I have your paper.
Remember, you gotta go between the first and the second, so you gotta go all the way over. Between the first and the second. Keep going back.
Did this right?
Alright, let's pick somebody random to do this on the board. Alright, let's see. Somebody random, 5, 1, 19.
So I did do it right.
Kinsey! Let's put on the board for us. We need a little more space though.
I don't know if it's right. But
Find out. Alright, Kinsey's gonna do this one on the board for us. Check her answers, see if you agree with it. You can just write your final answer. You've got it in a few little bumps in there. Makes it look a little weird.
that's all they can do.
Don't even know what that is. Is that a 14?
Yes,
What is
it
that?
Alright, it's 14. Okay, write your final answer. Just your final answer, Kinsey. Anywhere you want. That's not, that's empty. There you go. 3.1, 4, 1, 5, 9, 6, 5. Oh, you're running out of space. Just put it below. Put it below. Times 10 to the 14.
That's really
So
bad.
remember, your decimal has to be between the first two numbers. You just need a little extra space. Alright, so we went from regular numbers to scientific notation. We're going to work backwards this time.
Are you recording?
Unless I didn't put the button, yes.
Do you like your voices of the YouTube video?
Yeah.
Subscribe and leave a like.
Alright, so we're going to go backwards this time. Oh, that's right, I forgot we did. So, what we did before was scientific notation is really good for writing really big numbers and really, really small numbers. So, this thing is really small, we're going to write it in scientific notation. But this one is a little bit backwards. I already have my decimal over here, right? I got my decimal right here, I'll just write it a little bit bigger. It is slightly different because I am going backwards than my first way. So, just like before, I'm going to move my decimal over, but this time, when you are going to the right, when your decimal is going to the right, I'm going to stop after I jump the first non-zero. So I've got all these zeros in front. I'm going to stop as soon as I jump one that's not a zero. So 1, I'm going to, and just like before, I'm going to count the number of times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, that's right. I forgot these are all 9. Just because it happened to work out that way. So I jump this 4. It's not a 0. That's where I'm going to move my decimal. So I have 4.89. That is my number in front now. So be careful. Don't move it over here between the 8 and the 9. That's wrong. Jump after you jump the first non-zero, put your decimal there. And then we're going to go times 10, just like before. And now, our exponent, oh wait, how many times did I, that's right, 9, right? Yeah, that's why you write it down, because if you don't, you forget. Okay, because I moved my decimal right, it is going to be a negative exponent. So I'm going to have times 10 to the negative 9. When your decimal goes right, it's negative. When you move your decimal left, your exponent is positive.
That's that whole equation thing,
Alright, so when you move your decimal to the right, it's negative. When you move it to the left, it's positive. So one more real quick. So my decimal's over here on the left. I'm going to move it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I'm going to 6 over here so I don't forget it like last time. And I got 3.11. Because I jumped my first non-zero. We're going to go times 10. And because I moved my decimal right, it's not just 6, it is negative 6.
7.
6. Nice try.
Isn't it 18?
Decimal notation.
What?
Decimal notation.
Standard.
Alright. Did I give you guys an in class? Yeah. So let's, you guys want to do another practice? You want to do one on your own?
We'll do the exit.
You know, we still got more. Alright, let's skip A. Let's skip B. Let's skip C. Do part D.
I just did
I just A and B.
Oh, good. You guys got so much practice.
Thank you.
So much. So do part D as your next in-class problem. We'll have somebody do it on the board for funsies.
D.
Mm-hmm.
See how much money you make.
Part D. Luis, you doing this one? On your paper?
Yeah.
Better.
Finish.
Better.
Do we do A or do B?
D.
I don't want to do it.
Oh, obviously you don't want no points.
Just
Just
kidding.
want the uneligible again.
Right,
Bro,
bro.
ain't you feel roasted?
Take this. I'll give you about another 30 seconds, then I'm going to pick somebody random. Put it on the board.
It was like, one after yeah.
I don't think we got it.
I thought that was like one of our first home games.
We go get some.
Tyson, did we play Cove yet?
We played Co on Friday.
Yeah, Moses, remember that, like that steroid freak guy that you were playing against? He's like the guy from Cove. He's like white.
Spazzy kid?
Yeah,
The one who said he liked your shoes?
Oh, okay, yeah, they all had like the same team shoes.
yeah.
Yeah, he's all good. Some guys should fit this.
Yeah, he's all on like shoes, and I was like,
Thanks, nice. Squishy.
it's weird because like teams they like compliment me.
I just looked at him, I was like, you know.
Alright, this one board.
Find a room.
Greg's gonna do this one on the board for us.
Good job,
Greg.
Thanks.
Wait, do I?
Yeah.
No, you just give it.
Like, no, seriously, last game, this kid, he's like, you know what's really hard to go to you, I'll give you 50 cents. I didn't.
When we were playing softball, school, we were all, no, school, wrong guys all. Good game. He shook my hand to the free throw line in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, he's like, go beat Sherman's butt.
Yeah, he's like, beat Sherman's butt for us.
Great, one good.
It was all, sorry, we lost my.
It's your fault, Greg.
There you go, go beat
You
Sherman's
just
butt.
want water. Yeah, so.
Alright,
Okay, Greg's gonna be doing
alright, now Greg's doing it now that we figured out our tablet.
Hey, I said it for you.
So we get 7 times.
Times.
18
No.
times
That.
18.
You messed up once and then you got really jittery.
Hey, Greg, watch out.
Ah.
Greg, no.
Greg, no. Greg.
Not that
Greg,
one.
no.
The other one. That one, no.
Greg, don't.
Right there.
No,
You got this.
Greg, no.
To the far right.
There you go, you got it. Alright.
Greg, watch out.
So, 7 times 10.
Just restart.
That's not good.
3.
18.
That's an
Negative
X,
7.
that's an X0.
So, as you did this, if you did 7.0 times 10 to the negative 7, that's also acceptable.
It's not acceptable.
It is also
Unacceptable.
It is. Alright, so we've gone back and forth. We've gone and made scientific notation numbers. Now we're going to take scientific notation numbers and we're going to turn them into standard. Standard notation are just regular numbers, the way you're used to writing them.
Say a random word. No.
Alright. So we're going to write the weight of an Asian elephant in grams. So it is 5.5 Asian elephant.
Louise. You're an Asian elephant.
Yeah. Alright, so the weight of this elephant in grams is 5.5 times 10 to the 6. So if we're going to write it in standard form, we're going to start by putting down the decimal we have, 5.5. And then I need to look at my exponent. When my exponent is positive, I'm going to the right. So it's a little backwards from last time. My exponent is positive, right? So I'm going to the right. So I'm going to move my decimal right. Hey, hush. Hey, John. I'm going to move my decimal right 6 times, because that's my exponent. So I'm going to go 1, and I'm going to jump an empty space, and I'm going to fill in these empty spaces in just a second. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And my decimals here.
You have to do that.
All these empty spaces, I'm filling in with zeros.
That's a you.
Because we can't just have an empty space, so I gotta fill it in with a 0. And then if I'm just gonna write this so it looks a little nicer, 5,500,000. And because in my problem it talked about grams, I have to put that grams label on my answer. Because it says, what's the weight? It's not just 5,500,000. It's 5,500,000 grams. Alright, let's try another one this time. I'm going to write the weight of an ant in standard form. It is 3.1 times 10 to the negative 3. So just like last time, I'm going to start with my decimal. But because my exponent is negative,
You're going right.
we are going to go to the left.
Good job.
Oh, wait.
Stupid.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Stupid.
You go to the
So,
left
that's
because
good.
you didn't know
Must be
that.
so embarrassing.
Right.
Alright, that brings up a good point. So, last time, when I wrote scientific notation, it's backwards from what we're doing now. So it's separate. Last time, when I went to the right, it was negative. When I went left, it's positive. It is flipped this time. When you write it in scientific notation, it flips. So I'm really going left. And I'm going to go left, since it's -3, I'm going to go left 3. So 1, 2, 3. These are where my decimal is. And just like last time, I got to fill in my empty spaces with zeros. Write it a little nicer, 0.0031. And just like last time, I got to put my label, which is G for grams. Alright, you guys want to practice another one? You want to try them?
No, let's just no. We don't need practice.
No, we don't need practice.
Alright,
More
then do
or
part
execute.
C and D.
Are you kidding me,
Do
Goldie?
C and D.
I'm not even.
Skip A and B, do C and D. Do them both. I'll have two different people write these final answers.
Pokey. Luis, when I type in no, it probably like Megan Trainor's
No, you
song.
didn't.
Luis, I mean, great. Let me read it.
In the back of the head. Was it ready? It was ready.
Because I like
I didn't
that.
even care. I was like,
Alright, I get that. Luis, give me a random word.
No.
no, it's all weird.
Hallelujah.
After we're done with the C class.
I am done.
Uh-huh. But not everybody else's.
Yeah.
Got a question, Ruben?
Yeah.
What's your question?
Are we just gonna do that? That's all we do.
Alright, I think I got it.
Regular number?
It's like almond people.
Yeah,
okay. It came up.
Where's the this?
You should search up your own name.
Oh, would that be right?
Of course.
Is that
What?
You'll
three? I'm gonna switch up. Is that 3 point? This number here. This number here. You should write it nicer. You go 3, 5. You put the comment here. And comment here. So it's 3, 9, 2, 8.
But were you born on March 11th?
Like, stuff.
Nope, you're not here.
Oh.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3.
I just found your birth record.
One.
Yeah, Lindsay Lewis and Rule.
Oh,
The movie of Arnold Jr.
Did you get the same answer? Then you're fine. You have the same answer. No, we're gonna do it over the board. Luis, Beto, sit. Yeah, go over it. So we're gonna have part C. We're going to have Luis. Oh, look at that. Luis, do part C on the board for us.
Yeah, Luis on order.
Let's find out.
Just kidding, Luis. I believe
Hi,
you.
I know
Luis.
Luis doesn't pay attention.
Part C.
Mr. Bulky, here's what happens when I type in my name.
Lucky girl.
I'll have you grab register number 1. In a line.
Why'd you try that?
Alright, come on, Luis. Don't erase it, just run around it. You just restricted your writing area. Alright, do part C for us, Luis. Just write your answer. Just write your final answer. Just right there. Write your final answer.
Under it?
No, right there. Right where you started that 2. Use that 2 in your final answer.
Come on, man.
Okay, point.
What is it too
Alright, point 0.00209. Looks good. That isn't worth a signature. It's not good enough.
My turn now?
Maybe. I gotta choose somebody.
Alright,
Alright, and then for part D, we're gonna have
Me. None.
Mr. Gawky, I swear you're doing it on
This
purpose.
is the second day in a row.
You get everyone near
Look at
me,
you.
but I can't do it.
Just put it on the bottom somewhere.
That's
I'm
not
right in front of you and right behind you.
Man, so
Kansas
close.
did it too.
So close. Part
Put it in
D.
standing notation.
Part D. Did you?
Yeah, I did. Okay,
Mr.
can I just say my answer?
Yeah, just put your answer. Don't show where it goes too much.
I already did the exit tickets. Can I listen to music now?
No, once we're done.
Oh.
Alright, so for the last one, 3-8.
talking about it.
Shut up, Beto.
Honestly, Gopi's way cooler than me.
Luis. Hey.
Okay.
Please.
Now.
Gopi, you're on Google.
You're on the Google.
I'm not. Look up.
Yes, I know.
This is what you'll find.
Being a little creepy searching me, but okay.
That was Gregorio.
What's going on with that one little zero right in the middle
Moses,
there?
Moses.
Why keep drawing loads of
Making a pattern or something on here?
Moses.
I get like weird Bible stuff off.
Ooh, that one's like a perfect circle, this one. You like that?
Not bad. That's not bad. Alright, so let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 zeros. Yep, that's good. Nice job. Oh, it's not worth it. Haven't earned a signature.
That's who.
Nice try.
I was just erasing it.
Well, okay, I'll take that. Alright, that is it. If you haven't yet, do your exit ticket. I will turn on Socrative in just a second. You can list the music on your Chromebook. And then I'll put your homework on Google Classroom. Yes, Ruben.
How do we do the negative ones?
We just talked about them.
You go.
Give me a minute.